Even if it's in my final days. I said, come on, mama.
I was like, why does she choose to be buried way out here?
Because she said, I'm not getting buried in the hood. Okay. I'm going to get out. Listen, she said, I'm not getting out of here, whether I live or die when I'm doing it. Listen.
What's crazy is
I'm going to die trying.
I go to, visit her resting place. I'm like, man, I got a plan.
Because it's not close.
It's like an hour away. I got a plan to get there. And, but
that was her wish.
Yeah, but you know what? If that made her happy in her final moment,
that's right.
It made me happy. So when I go there, I can be happy and, not upset, not like at the cemetery.
Right. Welcome. This is For Better and Worth,
the podcast where we don't believe you have to sacrifice your relationship while you grow and build your net worth.
We are your hosts.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Erica Young. And we're so glad you're joining us today.
All right, y'all. Let's get into it. Hey, babe. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, husband?
I'm doing good. We're back at it. It's always good to get back and, we've heard from the people and we are taking your advice.
We always ask each other, how you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think we should already know how we doing.
Well, yeah.
But it's a good check-in because I think sometimes when we record or when we're ready to hit the podcast airwaves and all of that, the Youngs be having some stuff behind the scenes happening for real.
Right. Life has been pretty hectic and busy for us lately.
And life be lifing.
Oh my God.
That's
an understatement.
The last month for the Youngs has been a lot. So today I am, smiling and feeling good. Life is good. God is good. We're good.
Yeah.
But It's been a lot, to say the least.
We say life has been lifing. Life has been lifing.
Yeah.
Lifing.
We can't afford the G.
Right.
Not today.
Right. But I think we're going to talk about something today that most people, I think they kick it down the road. They feel uncomfortable, discussing it. But it's something that we all have to address and deal with. And the unfortunate thing is I've had to deal with it, more recently with, some of my relatives. And we're talking about like funeral expenses. We talk about, saving, getting out of debt and having a plan. But man, when you talk about funeral expenses, when you lose a loved one, that is something that really requires like some planning. And it's better to take the time and plan on the front side than to be on the back side when you're in the midst of grief, trying to figure things out, because you make decisions at that point that probably are not some of the best decisions.
Yeah, because you're emotional. So,
yes.
And so in addition to this being our current state of affairs in our life, we have had more than one person on the survey say that this is a topic that they wanted us to share. So we just thought it was timely to just bring in our real life for you. And I checked in to make sure that this was still a good topic for us to discuss, because we do that. We do take the time to ensure that we're ready to have that, whatever that conversation is.
It can be a tough conversation, because depending upon who you lose and how close you are to those people, just talking about it could be tough.
Yeah. So I'm going to let you start, husband, because I think it's important for you to kind of share with the people what's been happening behind the scenes in our home.
Yeah. Well, I would even start as we get into this, I lost my mom a few years ago and we had to go through the process of, burying her. And I think a lot of people don't even know what the wishes are of their parents or their loved ones, because we have to go back and remember we're part of that sandwich generation.
Yeah.
Where we're that in between where we're raising, children, and some of them are adult children or nearing adulthood, and we have aging parents. And we're kind of caught in between dealing with parents and some care that they require and adult children that are coming to their own. So, it's important to start having those conversations early on. And more recently, I lost one of my siblings, it's been very challenging to deal with that. But the sad part is that we kind of suspected we may be here, but I'm always of the mindset of trying to figure out what's the best way to approach things. So I start having some of those conversations with my sibling when we thought this may happen, and that is never a comfortable conversation that people want to have.
It's a terrible conversation, husband. And let's be clear. I don't want to lose y'all. Okay.
It won't be morbid.
No.
Or like that. So,
but I can appreciate the fact that you said we need to start having these conversations, because the truth is that honestly, I think we're more hesitant because of our own emotions about it, but the other person may not be as hesitant. Some people are ready to talk about their mortality. And years ago, when you lost your mom, you told me I needed to have some conversations with my own mother.
yes.
And I did, and I learned some interesting things, and she has tried to make some plans or put some things in place so the conversation was less cumbersome, because she was already preparing. My mother knows that she's not a 20-year-old anymore, right? Right? Like, so, and it is, I think, really loving for a person to think about how they want to leave this earth,
Yes.
so that they do it in a way that is helpful for the family left behind. And you've been the responsible party for both your mom and sister in terms of the final expenses, or I should say the planning of those things.
Well, I just think that I want people to win, and I want people to be in a situation where they can win. And in order to do that, you have to have effective planning in place, and you have to take the time to do that. Because, like in the conversation with your mom, you had to know, do you have life insurance? And if so, how much insurance to take care of, any final expenses, so it's not a burden on any one person. Or, do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? And those are all things, because here is the reality. The funeral business is a big business.
Yes. When you told me how much it cost to have the final expenses paid for your mom's, I mean, in theory, I thought I knew, but in reality, my
was
mouth
like,
was
what?
open. Okay, so let's talk numbers, brass tacks. So let's start with mom. How much was it?
I mean, well, first of all, I don't even think we can go there yet.
Okay.
I don't think we can go there yet, because I think what we have to talk about is people think about prepayment
Yes.
of insurance, of final expenses, and that could be you're paying for a coffin, or you paying for a
Burial.
burial plot, or you could pay for the whole thing, and they can have it done exactly the way they want. Or you can just have life insurance that would take care of it, and you'll use life insurance to take care of the final expenses. But you have to know what you're going to do, and there's benefits, I think, to some degree, to both. And in the case with my mom, I didn't know, but she had actually paid for her burial plot, picked it out, and paid for her coffin. I was like, oh, okay. And she knew where she wanted to be buried, and I was like, all right, well, I definitely want to honor her wishes.
Yeah.
But even having prepaid for some of her expenses, is still out of pocket was like $8,000.
So that's interesting. She paid for.
What you would think are the most expensive things.
Did she? Okay, so specifically, did she pay for the coffin as well as the burial plot?
Yes.
Those two things.
Those two things.
And $8,000 was additional.
Beyond those two things.
Okay. And
that's crazy.
It is crazy. And so, and quite frankly, well, anyway, so, and that is only for the things that were done in terms of the funeral or memorial,
Right.
that
the
itself.
service,
Because we also went to dinner afterwards.
Yep, that costs.
That kind of stuff. So, and there could be other hidden costs, right? So,
but you have to remember, like the cemetery, they charge,
yeah,
to put you in, to cover you up with dirt,
to dig the hole.
Right.
So
there's a ton of costs that could be associated with.
Yes. And my whole thing with this was, it's flabbergasting, to be honest, like
Hmm.
how expensive this stuff costs. Like that is a trip. But when you said have a conversation with your mom, and I did, she was way more open and I
Right.
learned of what her wishes. And I think that when we do those things, it makes it a little bit more palatable to give them their wishes, right? Like to make sure that they are followed through on. And so because your mom, we joke now, but mom lived in the hood. Okay.
She grew up. She grew up in the rough side of the city,
Okay, but she was buried.
way out in the suburbs.
Listen, mama said, no, 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 we getting out the hood, even if it's in my final days. I said, come on, mama.
I was like, why does she choose to be buried way out here?
Because she said, I'm not getting buried in the hood. Okay. I'm gonna get out. Listen, she said, I'm not getting out of here, whether I live or die when
Right.
I'm doing it.
But what's
Listen,
crazy is
I'm gonna die
like
trying.
I go to, visit her resting place. I'm like, man, I got a plan.
Because it's not
It's
close.
like an hour away. I got a plan to get there, and
Yeah.
but
That was her wish.
yeah, but you know what? If that made her happy in her
Yep.
final moment,
That's right.
it made me happy. So
That's
when I
right.
go there, I can be happy and not upset, not like at the cemetery, like
Right.
who
And
over there? What's going on?
you're right. And you know what's so interesting? So my mother made a different choice. She told me that she wanted to be cremated. And I was like, instantly, I told you, I was like, listen, don't you burn me up. I don't want to be burnt up, okay?
Yeah,
And
but you know what? It's look, everybody who I mean, a lot of people who are watching or listening, you may be believers or you may not. But I believe it's just at that point, a external structure. It is not you, it's not the person. The memories of you will be embodied and remembered. So I really don't check out on this episode, like Erica said, because there's two things that are constant in life. Babies are going to be born every single day,
mm-hmm.
and people are going to go on and make their transition every single day.
Yeah.
And just like we make preparation when we have a child, we start thinking about long-term things like I got to be saving for college if that's something that they choose to do, or if you want to help with marriage, with weddings, we're always planning and thinking ahead with our children. Their first car, maybe how are we going to pay for that or fund that? And I think equally, we have to just make preparation for, those final arrangements, because it can put people in a bind. Or we see where they have a GoFundMe to raise expenses,
Or
or a car
families fight,
wash.
or they fight over the choices made regarding the
Right.
final expenses or the final arrangements.
Yeah. And, well, even before you get to that, just trying to pay for it,
Yeah.
people are having a car
Right.
wash to pay for expenses, or someone at the last minute has to swoop in and appear to be a savior to, put this person to rest. And I think this can help you avoid conflicts, avoid fights, because you can talk to different people in your family, typically people who are older, like your parents or grandparents, that you anticipate that they will probably pass first. But we know
It don't always work
life
that
be
way.
lifing,
Yeah.
and stuff happens, but
Mhm.
it's okay to have those conversations. And more recently, I encouraged you to talk to, your dad
Yeah,
and
we'll
say,
get there too. But listen, let me just say this. Do something. Let's just pause. Do something, because your mom chose to prepay for a portion of her expenses,
right.
which she believed to be helpful. And it's at today's rate. If you decide to prepay for something that you don't know when it's going to happen, but it's today's cost, and you know that in 10,
Mhm.
20, 30 years, it's going to cost more. So that is the benefit of prepaying,
She
right?
probably had bought this
Years ago.
man.
Years ago.
I will have to go back and look at the documentation. It was probably 20 plus years ago that she had that, and she had like a little payment plan
Yeah.
that she was on, but it was important enough for her, even with not a really big income, to make sure that she made that preparation. So I commended my mom when I found that out. I was like, wow, I commend that she was that forward thinking at a time when we were young and she was a lot younger, but she was thinking like, okay, well, let me make sure I try and take care of this so I don't put the burden on my children. I was like, wow, okay, mom.
Yeah. I think it's important that you do something, and I'm glad that she has something in mind to do. And so it's either the prepayment or listing out your wishes, write it out,
Hmm.
or get life insurance, or have a conversation with people. Let them know if there's money somewhere for something like that. Like that, I think just do something, because if you don't do something, you're gonna leave all these question marks for people who are mourning. They're sad. They wish that this time or this day did not come, and now they have decisions to make, and they have to make them quickly. And that is, I think, it can be very challenging. So
Let's spend some time talking about these two options.
what are the two options?
So prepayment and life insurance.
Yeah.
Because with a prepayment, you're like you said, going to lock in rates today, and with the future value of money, money is worth less in the future. You take advantage today of where you are, and you can pay for the coffin or the plot or all the expenses, tombstone, all those things. And then when your family, that time comes, they have the documentation, and you gotta tell somebody where the stuff is.
Yes. Oh my
Like,
gosh. If
you
you
can't just have it and not tell people where the documents
So
are
did y'all
or how
have
to
that
access
conversation?
it.
How did you know where the stuff was?
Well, my mom had got sick some years ago,
Uh-huh.
and I started thinking about these different things. So I was going through like things that she had, like important
So she
documents.
didn't tell you.
She actually didn't tell
She
me.
told you that she did this, like she did the prepay.
No, no. She did not
I
tell
didn't
me.
know that.
She did not tell me. I was in the process of like going over her house and just like starting to go through things and trying to locate
Mm.
like any important documents and stuff like that. And I found this folder. I was like, "What is this?" And I started looking at it, and I was like, "Oh wow!" And she had insurance, and I didn't know it until after the fact.
Wow.
So really, we're trying to encourage people to have the conversations because I found out she actually did both.
Mm.
She did some prepayment and she did some insurance, which I didn't know about because she had just been paying for insurance
So
over time.
the coolest thing is that you were wise enough to go
I
do
went
the
searching.
research, because if you hadn't done that, you may never have known what she had, because she didn't share
Exactly.
that with you. And
Exactly.
then on top of that, she had insurance, because quite frankly, even though it was an additional $8,000 that came, you know, in terms of the bill for
The
all of
insurance
that,
was able
the
to offset.
insurance offset it.
Yep.
And technically, what ended up having to happen, you didn't come out of pocket for the 8,000. You just had the insurance pay out to them.
Actually, let's back up. I don't know if
Okay.
you remember,
Okay.
but we actually did pay out of pocket.
The whole thing?
We paid out of pocket that entire amount. My sister chipped in some, and then between us we paid that 8,000,
Mm.
and we got reimbursed when the insurance came through.
And
And that's a
that's
point,
a point. See? You got to have some cash to be able to do that, because to be honest with you, I don't even remember.
right?
That has been 3
But we had
years.
it's been 4.5 years almost. No,
Nope,
four
no,
years.
3 years, because it wasn't 2020.
It
Was it?
was. It was.
Oh my gosh.
It's been 4 years.
Time flies,
But
honey.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. That's why you need to have an emergency fund, because you didn't even remember me like paying the money, because I probably used some money out of an emergency fund because that wasn't an expense that we had, allocated for. But it was like, okay, well, we've got to do it. So boom, just pay it. And that's why you have to have an emergency fund, because you never know when things are going to come up. But if you do what we're telling you to do, have a conversation and find out, are any of these things in place, like insurance or prepaid expenses? Because if the prepaid expenses are there and you get the documentation, and someone has to be the responsible party to hold on to those things. And people need to know, like if your siblings, they should know. So if something happens to one, the other can retrieve those documents and know the insurance. And like we tell people, like when you're doing things, you almost have to have a trusted party, or if you have a will or a trust, have someone who's going to serve as your executor who has access to all of your accounts with the account numbers and passwords. These are just practical things that you need to do.
I think that people who are in our position, who are in the middle of the sandwich, are the ones who need to initiate some of these conversations with their parents and ensure that they have the access, availability. They need to know where things are so that they, in fact, won't have to go digging as you end up having
Right.
to go digging. Um, and so, although it is challenging, I would say start the conversation. So the way that we did this made it a lot easier. So you had when something happened to your mom, it was a natural conversation to have a conversation with my mother, and you
Mm-hmm.
said you need to talk to your mom, and you asked me if if I wanted you to talk to her.
Right.
And I said, "No, just let me get myself together because I know that I'm more of an emotional human and I had to wrap my brain around it a little
And I'm
bit.
more of a task-oriented
And
human.
you no. You can be a bulldozer. Let's be clear. But you asked, really patiently, like, okay, so do you want me to initiate that conversation? I said, no, I will do so. And then what's interesting is I started the conversation, and then you and I got in the middle of doing that together, and we got a lot of stuff done with my mother.
Yeah.
And
And I ultimately did have a conversation with her.
you did after I
Yeah.
started it, and it
Because I
made
was
it
like,
natural.
because I said, look, Mom, you got to make sure.
Because y'all have a good relationship, and
Right.
that's easy. She sees you as her son, not son-in-law.
Right. And she knows I'm like, look,
Look, mama.
look.
That's what you say. Don't you say
I
that?
say, now, look now, what you going to do? It's almost like,
And mom does like this. Yes,
that
okay.
sandwich generation, we become the
She
parents.
sit up straight.
We become the parents like, look, what you not going to do is not get these forms together. Okay. But I did it with love.
You did. And she appreciated. She said it. My mother is a real, amiable type of person.
Right.
And so she went along with all of it, right?
Yeah.
And she knows who you are. So,
Yeah.
but that was helpful. And then I had to do it again. So this time, because I didn't feel comfortable yet having that conversation with my father, and I shared that with you just a couple weeks ago, and you said, again, this is the natural conversation that
Mm-hmm.
could come from the loss that we've
It's
currently
something that we're going
experienced
through, so the time
is
is
right.
now.
And so then I just said, Chris is planning, this is what this looks like, blah, blah, blah. And my father said, yeah, I want that too. And I was like, what? Like,
Right.
he volunteered it. Our parents, those who are elderly, those who know they have already had lots of life experience, they know, they are aware of their own
Their mortality,
mortality.
yeah.
And so they've thought about it, even if you don't want to think or talk about it. And I just have to insert this one little thing. Even when I was talking with my sister about my parents' wishes, she was like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk
Right.
about it. I was like, it's
Right.
okay. I know what they want,
Yep.
and I'm willing when that time comes to initiate what their desires are. And she was like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. And sometimes that's the truth. Like, there's somebody who doesn't want to have that conversation. But I think what I would just want to hone in on is find the way to insert it. And I didn't have a huge conversation with my
Mm-hmm.
dad. I didn't do a whole lot of planning after
Right. It
that.
wasn't a whole didactic
No.
download. It was
But I just said, "Oh wow, that's interesting. Thanks, Dad. That's good to know." That's all I said. And then honestly, the conversation moved on. And so I think we make it. I know I did. I made it bigger than it had to be.
I'm sure there are people who are watching and listening that feel like your sister do.
Absolutely.
And they're gonna say, "Oh no, I can't deal with this." But in the time of mourning is not the time to deal with it, because you're like, "Oh, I want to do the best for them," and I don't know. I'm not trying to be cheap, but I'm not trying to be taken advantage of
Right.
in those moments, because I was just like, and it's so tough to do, to have to call around and shop prices.
Okay, so let's talk
It's
about
like,
it. Let's talk about it. So we already discussed mom, and
hmm
she had a traditional funeral with all of the expenses. She prepaid for her plot, but also the casket. And out of pocket was still an additional 8 grand for which
yes,
her insurance paid.
yes.
Now, different situation with sis. And feel free, share her different situation.
I mean, she wanted to be cremated, and we have a memorial, and so it's just a different scenario, different situation, and I think sometimes just talking about it helps me process it.
Because we're right
Because
still in the middle of all of
yeah,
this.
because it's one of those things where it can be these are tough conversations, but we do this because we want people to come out of this, feeling like they've done their family members right, done justice by them, and you can help manage your own emotions as you go through this, because there's nothing like adding like a big financial stress on top of already emotions that are raging all over the place because you've lost this loved one. And I know my sister, she wanted to be cremated, and I was like, okay, we want to honor that.
Was
And
there any resistance from other people in the family around that decision?
I don't believe so. I mean, I kind of shared that with others, and I mean, some of them like, oh, but it's like this is what she wants. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem with final expenses, is that it starts to become about us.
Ooh,
We started, well, this is what I want. This is how I want to send them off, and that's fine. You can do that if you're going to foot the bill. But sometimes we got to be aware of what the person wanted, and we
yeah.
want to honor their wishes. And so, I just thought to call the funeral home we used in the past, and it felt weird
Yeah.
asking for a price for a cremation
But
service.
everything costs
Yeah,
money.
it's real. And they told me a number. I was like, oh, I was like, wow.
So the number was how much,
It's
babe?
like $2,500. I was like,
Just for that.
I said, and I felt bad. I was like, well, what comes with that?
I mean, seriously.
Like, what do you get for that? And they went through their explanation. I was like, wow, okay. Let me get back to you. And I actually called some other places, and the price started to go down.
So someone adjacent
Well,
to the family
well, I called several other places
before you talked to
before I
her.
talked to her,
Got it.
and the price was going down. It was like 2,500, 2,000, 1,400. I was like, wow. And then someone suggested another provider, and I called them, and I was like, they told me like $7.99, or if it's outside this area, $8.99. I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to. I mean, I want the low budget service.
Like, I'm scared. I mean, it's cremation. How that gonna work? You know what I'm
Like,
saying?
help me
Is it
explain, help me understand what's going on here.
exactly? You know, we don't
And
want this to be botched, right?
but that takes me back to how it's a business,
Yeah.
because I almost hate saying this. It's a volume based business for them,
It is.
and the more volume they get,
The
the
more money they
they
make.
like, we don't have to charge the most because we get more volume. I was like, just thinking about it is like, it's kind of like, it's a little creepy, but these are real life things.
It's kind of disgusting, but everything is a business.
Yes.
Everything.
And so, we're talking about how people can win in life,
Yeah.
and spending 20, 30, $40,000 on final expenses
Woo.
is crazy.
So let's back up, because
Now, I want you to roll me out like, like the queen.
Uh,
I want a parade.
oh my gosh.
I want the carriage, with the gold, so I can roll out. I be and stay, and be like, give everybody the opportunity to say goodbye
Okay.
to me.
You know what? Okay, great. So you need to prepay for that. I need today's dollars, because I know you're trying to live to 100. So
Well,
I need today's price.
you brought that up.
But wait, hold on. So listen, sis wanted to be cremated, and my mother actually said she wanted that choice, and I said, "Oh, really?" And I just was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Don't burn me up." And now,
Stop saying it like that.
but those were my words. Those nobody else's words. They my words. I know it sounds weird, but it's true. That's what I said. So, but I'm now, after a few years, you just said what did you say about what
It's not you.
it's not me anymore?
Yeah.
And I'm less opposed to
Right.
that idea because honestly, memorials, funerals are very sad. We are going to miss that person. But when you,
What we don't need is somebody trying to climb up in the coffin like, oh, don't go.
because we've seen that,
No, stay. It's
that
like,
junk happens.
it's like,
It's not
stop
just
it.
in the movies.
Stop it.
And it makes it so much less emotional when you can celebrate
Yes.
versus seeing a person laying
It's
there
a
or a
celebration of
body.
life.
And so that shift has, because I
Made you
actually
start to think
had,
different. Made
and
you
I
think
had my
differently.
mother's cousin when she passed, they had a memorial. She was cremated, and they had this beautiful photo of her. And I just thought, oh my gosh,
It
like
was a whole different
it
vibe.
was a whole different vibe. And that that was the one time I realized how different the experience of sending them to,
Yes.
feeling like we have closure could be very different. So anyway, my perspective is shifting. So while I would love to have a parade. I would love for people to have a parade for me, but you don't need to parade me in front of it. Let's just have a big blow up, picture of Erica with her hair done and her makeup. You know what I'm saying? Like we need to remember how Erica was like the
With your front dyed
listen, I'm not gonna have no
color.
gray.
With your front
I'm
color.
gonna be 100 and I'm not gonna have no gray. I'm just telling
Okay.
you right now. So
Okay.
anyway, but we could do all that pomp and circumstance, but I don't actually think I want people to see that display. And so
Well,
that's interesting.
well, you have an aunt that just turned,
102.
and I know she's thinking about all this stuff. And she has planned it all
Yeah.
out. She
Yeah.
she is not afraid like
Mm-mm.
to talk about
Mm-mm.
things, but at the same time she is living her life to the fullest.
Right.
But I think if somebody who is 102 who has seen so much in life is like, hey, one thing is for sure, I'm gonna live and I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And
She
I'm
is
sure she has
open.
planned it out and she is open to conversation and
She's written
dialogue.
her obituary herself.
Right. And that's wild
Mm-hmm.
because I think the whole point in this is to try and manage our emotions.
Yeah.
And like we talked about prepay, but insurance, people tend to have insurance because they think they need, well, there's only certain reasons I think you need to have insurance. If you are the primary, provider or breadwinner in a relationship, the thought is to have 10 times your income in insurance. So should you go and pass on, your family will be provided for with your income via insurance. But when you reach a point where,
And I'm gonna add,
okay,
if you have any dependents and
yes,
you make money, whether you're the breadwinner or not, you need insurance.
yes,
Because think about it. If
yes,
you're
that's
not the
true.
breadwinner and y'all still living and making that money,
Right.
somebody,
Somebody's providing service or doing something
I
at
mean,
home. Even a
no,
stay-at-home mom needs
think
to have
about it.
insurance.
Well, yeah, think about it. Like money was coming into the house that no longer is coming into the house. And how do you continue to do all the things
Right.
without that income? That's why you actually, life insurance is misnamed. It should be called death insurance. When someone dies, it is replacing that income or the
Hmm.
service they provided to the household. And so you need insurance if you have dependents or anyone who is dependent on your income, be it your kids or anyone else.
Right. And so I think like even if you're someone who's a stay-at-home mom or dad, you need to have insurance because the service you provide remove you from that situation, someone has to provide it. So
Yep.
we've got to replace and be able to pay for those things that you did or provided in your home that you won't be providing anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think level term insurance is what we always suggest
And nothing else.
because that is the best thing because I found out that my mom had like some whole life insurance policies and they were super small and she was paying like $1 here, $2 there for these policies. And I was like, but she just did not know that wasn't the best insurance because she could have paid, something similar and had a different type of insurance that was
Or have more
much
insurance.
more beneficial because it would have been more insurance. But then people should reach a point if you don't have debt, your kids are adults or, you have maybe paid off your home, or your life experience, your life changes, your insurance needs change as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could reach a point where you become self-insured, where you don't have to pay that monthly premium anymore. And those are all things that you have to consider where you're at what phase in life, and what level of insurance you require.
Right.
What would you,
So
what would you add to that?
our guideline is 10 times your income,
Hmm.
no matter. So if you have a dependent of any sort, 10 times your income, and the term, this is why it's called term insurance, is for a period of time. So you
Right.
pay this amount for
10,
10,
20,
15, 20, or
30
30 years,
years.
right? So ideally, you want that insurance to extend just past when your children or the dependents are out of your home, or they're no longer dependent on you financially at minimum. So that's why you at least say 20 years, I would say, until they get to the age where they could take care of themselves. And self-insurance, like if you're doing what you need to do with your finances, you're saving money in a quote unquote retirement plan of
Right.
some sort or what have you.
IRA, 401k,
And
thrift savings for government employees.
yep. And when you get to the place where, and the age, quite frankly, but both, when you get to the place where you have at minimum the amount of what you were paying to have an insurance. So for instance, if your income is $100,000 and you have $1 million term insurance policy, after 20 years of investing,
You should have
$1
$1 million.
million, and that is considered self-insured. So if you have $1 million, then you don't actually need insurance. And this is the other thing is, after those 20 years, it's going to be expensive to get insurance. It's going to be,
Yes.
it's going to cost more.
And that's where this whole insurance, or this universal life, and that's where those different things come in. But you have to be informed on what's best for you. And just in our opinion, level term insurance is the best way.
Always
to
the
go.
best way.
That's the only thing we've ever had.
Yep.
Was level term insurance, and insurance provided by an employer. And that's a good point.
Yes.
Like, if you have insurance through your employer, that typically is not sufficient enough.
Because they don't ever go up to 10 times your income. They might go up to 3 times your income,
Yeah.
which is great. Thank you for the start. But then you
And
take
you can buy up insurance
a little bit more, depending on who, what your insurance provider at your work is. But then you have to go back outside of your company and get the difference.
Because what happens when you leave that job?
That's right.
You don't take that insurance with you
Exactly.
most times. So you have to have something that you've done outside of work that takes care of your needs, and work becomes an add-on.
Yeah.
So I think that's where people
Sidebar.
have to. Yeah. I mean, we could talk more and more about this, because there's a lot of different nuances and dynamics that people have to consider. But, what's your one make it worth it at this point?
Gosh, there's a lot.
It's a rich conversation.
It is, and I'm glad we had it. Before we get to make it worth it, I do want to say that we did, talk about this being a conversation that needs to be had. I do want to say that we have to take care of ourselves. And
Yes.
sometimes there is a
It's an important
financial
point.
expense to therapy or grief share of some sort, or some type of care. And those are things that, we've invested in therapy, you know what I mean? And so I don't want this to solely be a conversation around how do we pay for final expenses, but also a conversation around how we need to take care of ourselves. And that's not always easy either.
Yeah.
You know?
And I know that I struggle with that, because
Yeah.
I'm a doer, and I'm all about go, go, go. And I've had to just, like, take pauses and say, okay, I need to just take a moment. I have a very hectic life, and we do a lot of things that, just keep us on the go.
Yeah.
And I've had to realize, and I've actually had to set points where I said, okay, I'm going to take some time away from work during this time, or the holidays are approaching, I'm going to take time there just to reframe my mindset. So talking about self-care is a really big deal, because if you don't care for yourself, you could be on the other side of somebody planning expenses for you.
Thank you for that. And I think we've been a decent team trying to ensure we're both getting that type of support and help and that kind of thing. But it hasn't been easy, right?
No.
It's saying no to other stuff in life when you are doing this or taking care of this or being in the middle of an important loss in your life is a lot.
Yeah.
And
And
so
you don't
I,
have to feel like you have to say yes to everything, because
yeah,
no is a sentence in and of itself. No with a period behind it is a sentence.
yeah,
That's okay to say no.
yeah, yeah. So I'll get back to make it worth it. Um, One of the biggest things that I got out of our journey in the recent years is that conversation is really important, and the information you get from your loved ones when you do have hard conversations or conversation, we can also make these conversations really
Hmm.
hard, and you showed me how to make it not so hard. And so um I'm really thankful for that learning, that understanding in this regard, because it's certainly a conversation I wouldn't want to have, or I was, nervous about having. And I think that in order for you to really make it worth it, find a way to have a conversation.
I think that is, I couldn't put a better emphasis on that point, because it all has to start there.
Hmm.
But we are responsible in so many facets of our lives. We try to be, good people, and we want to be good employees and a good friend. And we think, I could go on and on about all these things that we try to do and we want to be good at, or we want to be the best at. And that comes with a level of responsibility. So I'm going to say, be responsible
Yeah.
and take action. And it may be that conversation, or it might be like in my case, when my mother passed, I just picked those insurance policies up that were for, other siblings, and I just started to pay for those
Hmm.
because she already had them for so long. So I said, well, let me just hold on to them. And so I felt like that was my responsibility to just continue on with those. And so I think that's what people have to do. Be responsible in your decision making.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And to be honest with you, being responsible is essentially a final act of love that you can be giving to someone else who's passed away, or to those that love you
Hmm.
when your time comes. And so consider it an act of love to have a conversation, to you know be the responsible party.
There's nothing like having someone in the midst of a, a, a difficult situation who can help guide
Yeah.
everyone, who can be, while they're grieving, they can still be kind of the voice of reason.
And you've been that.
And I think a lot of people need someone in their family to be
Mm.
that individual, because stuff has to get done and decisions have to be made. And we're just encouraging you guys to, make those decisions easy. Be that person that is responsible, that can get it done. So
Yeah.
this wasn't our typical conversation, but it's in line with
It's
those
important.
conversations, and it's very important.
Yeah.
And so we hope that you guys have stuck through to the end and you took all this in. And until next time,
We're out.
thank you for spending some of your time with us today.
We appreciate all of your support. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to this podcast.
You can find us on Instagram at For Better and Worth.
And sign up to receive our free guide, The 7 Reasons Your Money Relationship Isn't Working with Your Partner, on forbetterandworth.com.
Until next time, we're out of here.